Okay, good morning again. And, we started these sessions, I think it was three full years ago, um, and we started recording them partway along. So this is the last time we need to record a session. They'll all be recorded they're on the website. Wandering Through the Big Book, and they're also on YouTube. If you just put in Wandering Through the Big Book on YouTube, they'll come up. They're all going to be numbered, and they start with the introduction and runs right through all of the pages of the book from Doctor's Opinion through to page 164. So today we're talking about fear, and it's kind of a summary of a lot of what we've done. And um, it's important to me because I I I like being precise and exact, and I don't like being wrong. So when step 4 talks about admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs, I that fetches me right up. Wow, what is the exact nature of my wrongs? And and I think part of what it is that the exact nature of my wrongs is I am a frightened human being, um, and I'm trying to solve my fear problem, but I'm barking up the wrong tree. And I drank for a long time, and I know today that I drank on fear. I did not see that until doing the work of a resentment inventory when you get into that fourth column. And it's asking where in this situation with this person or institution or principle that I'm interacting with, where am I frightened, dishonest, or selfish? And I know how oftentimes I was not dishonest in the way I would think of being dishonest, and I wasn't necessarily being selfish, but I was always frightened. And I've learned since that time that my anger is my first responder to fear. That when I'm but the crazy part of this is I don't see the fear. What I and and it reminds me that I used to love anger in a way, the same way I'd love resentment, because I did not experience self doubt when I was angry. I was right, you were wrong, that was it. And I was trying to let you know how wrong you were and try to get you to do something about it. And if you told me that what powered that was my fear, I wouldn't have believed it. And I think that's the great value of this work. Plus, even more so, I don't know if any of you did it, but I asked you to print there's this worksheet that's part of the introduction to the study guide that that I think is real important to go over with people. There's so much information on this worksheet, and what this worksheet tries to do is examine um, the three aspects of our disease: the physical aspect, the mental aspect, and the spiritual aspect. And in each aspect, we're giving it a name. We're um, writing down the symptom by which we know we have it, the treatment of the disease, and finally the promises of treatment, because it's the promises that may get us to make an effort um, that otherwise we might not make. Um, and I may get into that later on. This is easiest to understand with the physical aspect. The Dr. Silkworth called it an allergy, which means an abnormal reaction. The normal reaction to alcohol is to drink one or two and stop. The body actually says stop for most people. We're not normal. Our bodies say go. Our bodies demand that we go. And that's what makes us different from non-alcoholics. And when you get to the mental part is that I need the relief that I get from alcohol so bad that my mind denies the truth of this physical allergy. It won't let me see it. I think I'm a smart guy, and I drank a long time, and my smart mind could never connect the first drink. I heard right away when you get in here, it's the first drink that gets you drunk. It's not the fourth drink. I thought it was the fourth drink. It's the first drink that's going to mean you're going to wake up hungover. It's not the fourth drink. My goal was to stop at three, and I never understood why I couldn't until reading Dr. Silkworth's insights into the thing, or being told by the meeting. So, at any rate, of the physical aspect, the name is allergy, whatever you want. I'm not a safe drinker. I'm not a normal drinker. Symptom, the phenomenon of craving. I know what you mean. Non-alcoholics, when you try to tell them about the phenomenon of craving, they don't understand. They shake their heads and I can take it or leave it, or they know they can drink safely because they're going to stop. The closest you can get is chocolate or potato chips or something else that it's very difficult to just have one. So, what's the treatment? Well, abstinence. That's all we got. You got to stay away from the first drink, which immediately takes you to the mental part. The mental part of it is I can't stay away from the first drink. And of course, the promises of treatment are no headaches, no handcuffs, no trouble, no lost cars, no jail terms, no, anything, DUIs, whatever is physical in nature, not mental, but physical. You get to the mental part. My favorite name is the strange mental blank spot. You can do anything you want. Obsession, um, the queer mental twist, it's called sometimes. That's this thing where I'm a reasonable person, maybe even intelligent, but I cannot see that the first drink is the drink that gets me drunk. And I need, as I said, the relief so bad that I can't stay away from number one. Symptom. Well, this is interesting. It's on page 24, I think. Um, After it runs through in italics, it says something about how we are unable to recall in our minds with sufficient force or power the memory of the last time we took the first drink and what happened. Um, we are without defense against the first drink. And then in the next paragraph, it says there is a complete failure of the type of defense that keeps us from putting our hand on a hot stove. Most alcoholics, you ask them, have you ever touched a hot stove? Oh, yeah. Did you ever do it a second time? No. And then did you ever get burned by alcohol? Oh, yeah. Did you ever do it a second time? And for me, it was um, 50 years times 300 days a year, 15,000 times I experienced the failure of the hot stove defense. Um, Treatment. Well, the mental part of our treatment is steps 4 through 9. That's where we really examine our thinking and our emotional reactions. Maureen brought up going to a workshop on emotional sobriety. This is how we get to emotional sobriety, by going through the tedious and often difficult work of steps 4 through 9, really looking at our thinking, our reactions. It starts with resentment, anger, moves to fear, and then moves to remorse around our selfish behavior, feeling bad about ourselves, about our selfish behavior. And that's the start of it, because then we share that with another alcoholic. We itemize into these things called character defects or deficiencies, and what they are, I believe, are mental, emotional, habitual responses to our lives over which we lose power. We are powerless over our responses. I am powerless not to experience resentment. I mean, today I'm doing good. I rarely experience resentment because I understand it more. The key for me was finding that we're asked to, in the third column, we're asked to examine, is this situation, is my response coming out of my pride, um, how my pride or self-esteem, how I want the world or how I want to feel about myself. Pride, self-esteem. Next one is ambitions. Ambitions means what I want to have happen here, my ambitions for my life. This is always for me, um, what shows up. I'm ambitious about any situation you put me in. I want something to happen. And when you get in the way of that or you inhibit that, I experience resentment toward you because my fear is my ambition for my life will not be realized. And my mind tells me you're the reason. So if I can change you, then I can accomplish my ambition. And it goes on to personal security, feeling safe. What do I need here to feel safe? Is my feeling of safety hurt or threatened? Are my financial resources hurt or threatened? That's pocketbook. Are my emotional relationships hurt or threatened? We call it personal relationships, including sex. So that means fear. That means that I'm frightened by something even when I don't see it. And I've learned, I thought of the third column as multiple choice. Well, not today. The third column is where you can find the fear, I think. When you start looking, what's causing me to get angry or frustrated or whatever it is that I'm getting with this situation. Um, so the goal of the first column, the physical part, is sobriety. Goal of the second column is sanity, emotional sobriety, you could say, sane, wholesome reactions to the stuff going on in our life. And then the third column, the spiritual malady, that's what I want to focus on right now because regardless of what you call it, spiritual malady is a perfectly acceptable name. Um, but I just remember my sponsor saying to me, when the book uses the word alcoholic or talks about alcoholism, you can substitute the word agnostic or agnosticism, and the sentence will actually make sense to you. And I tried it, and it does. So, for me, the name of my spiritual malady is I'm agnostic. What does that mean? Agnostic means when you talk about God, I don't say no, that's the atheist. I say maybe, or I'm not sure. Doubt about the God thing is what agnosticism. Well, for me, doubt is what really generates my fear. When I'm in doubt, I get frightened, um, and that's why when I'd feel angry, I wouldn't be frightened because I felt so sure of what I was doing, saying, how I was reacting. I wasn't doubting myself when I was angry. So, so a name for me is spiritual malady. I'm agnostic. How do I know I'm agnostic? In the same way that the phenomenon of craving tells me I have an abnormal reaction to alcohol, and the failure of the hot stove defense tells me I've got a strange mental blank spot. I'm insane. I keep doing the same thing over and over again, thinking somehow it's going to be different. The desperate experiment of the first drink, as the book calls it. So, how do I know I'm agnostic? Well, if you go to page 68, which is the instructions on doing a fear inventory, it says, so we put our fears down on paper. We asked ourselves why we had them, these fears. Wasn't it because self-reliance failed us? We've talked about this before, but I'm talking about it again. Um, Whoa, you mean you're telling me my fears are not necessarily for real, that they are because my self-reliance fails me? Well, what's the exact nature of my wrong? Why does my self-reliance fail me? Well, the answer for me is because it's built on my notion of myself as a human being, a body and a mind. And some aspect of that is being hurt or threatened. That's what column 3 is talking about. And I have no sense of my spiritual reality. I don't I don't see myself as a child of God, or I don't give much credence to the idea that I've got a soul. Now, this has been a big shift for me. Um, there's literature out there. There's people talking about near-death experiences, and they come back from them, and death frightens them no more. And a whole book called Journey of Souls that's about the life of the soul when it's not incarnated in a human body. And this has been of great comfort for me, and been of great import, because I realize that I've spent most all of my life totally hung up on the experience of my body and my mind, and not really very aware of the experience of my soul. One of my deepest wishes all my life was simply to experience my life as an opportunity instead of a burden. My life has always been this burden that I had to bear. And that's the way I thought of school. I never enjoyed school. Um, I thought of work pretty much. I never really enjoyed work because it was something you had to do and you had to get it right. And there's a certain pressure and tension in there. Um, I've spent different periods of time in music, and I loved that, but it's hard to make a living at playing music. And I've been ambitious about, I've wanted plenty of money to solve any problem that would come down the road. So um, unless you're Taylor Swift or somebody, it's hard to get to those big bucks. Um, so so what am I trying to say? That I believe that ultimately uh, I can reduce all of the difficulties in my life down to fear, and that ultimately my deepest fears have been twofold. One is I'm going to waste my life. I'm going to be laying on my deathbed, because this was my experience, laying on my deathbed, and I'm going to have this remorseful feeling of I wasted my life. I experienced this before I was 40. I had a kidney stone, although I didn't know that's what it was. All I knew is I was, of course, my mind goes from nothing. My mind goes from a hangnail to death in about 3 seconds. And so I'm laying on this hospital gurney being admitted to the emergency room, and I'm going to die. I'm in more pain than I'd ever experienced in my life. And then this thought occurred to me, you have spent your whole life feeling bad. Now you're going to die. Ain't that a waste? So that's bothered me. And the other thing is of torture, being tortured. um, I used to love the spy stuff, all the espionage, John Le Carre and Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy and all that stuff. And torture shows up in those things, and that would all, or what was the Dustin Hoffman and movie where he's tortured by this dentist, and boy, that would get me. Plus, I've spent a lot of time in the dentist chair, and um, and don't you know what a I don't know what word to use, what it is to discover that you're torturing yourself. You know, that I'm doing this to me with my own mind. And I didn't really see this till I went through this depression. And this depression was um, a time of powerlessness over my own reactions to my life, where I didn't want to do anything, and I hated everything, um, and I couldn't do anything about it. I was going to this was 4 years ago, 5 years, 2019, 2020. Um, and I'm still trying to work it out. But basically, I felt I was torturing myself, and the ultimate thing was I was powerless over this. You know, and for the first time, I mean, I understood powerlessness over alcohol. I got that pretty quick. I did not understand how powerless I was over my reactions to my life. In spite of doing, I mean, I've done a lot of work in here. I've worked as hard at it as anybody I know anyway. And that's out of desperation. It's out of desperation and devotion. It's out of a wonderful mix for me of desperation and devotion. I'm devoted because this is the first thing in my life that has brought me to, well, ultimately it's bring me into relationship with my creator. But to good feelings about my life. I don't have the fear of dying that I used to have. Um, I'm much more able today to to live and let live. Let you be you, and I'll be me. I don't get them too mixed up anymore. Um, and I consider the greatest promise in the book to be this page 68, where it says, I like to say it a little bit differently, that just to the extent that I humbly rely on my higher power, and I try to be the person I think my higher power created me to be. This is a big shift. You know, right in the paragraph above it, it says, we are in this world to play no, it's the same paragraph. We are in this world to play the role God assigns. Is that my truth? Am I here to play the role God has assigned me? Or am I here pretty busily building my own life, building my own role, deciding where I'm going to be, who I'm going to interact with, and how my life is going to look? You know, I've been trying to live my own life all my life until this depression thing. And now it's much more, I'm taking much more seriously step 11 and the end of step 10. You know, the end of step 10 says, we read it. How can I best serve thee? Thy will, not mine, be done. These are thoughts which must go with us constantly. This is the proper use of your human will. Not trying to arrange your life to be what you think you want it to be, to satisfy your body and your mind. The purpose of your life is to answer the question, my creator, how can I best serve thee? I can't even relate to that question earlier on. You know, I can relate to it today, and I'm thrilled that I can. I think the other thing that's just so different today from what it was is I was constantly trying to manipulate the world out there so I could feel okay in here. If I can just get it, of course, I'm a perfectionist, you know. If I can just get everything perfect out, and one thing wrong, and I can't enjoy myself. Um, if I can just get everything right out the perfect out there. I can feel okay in here. And it just ain't the truth. And it's taken me a long time to see that I'm as happy today as I've ever been. And this has been happening the last couple since coming out of that depression. Um, and I used to hear people say a life second to none, and I'd say that sounds a little competitive to me. What do you mean a life second to none? But what it means to me is it means a life that I was not capable of imagining because I was so busy fitting life into what I wanted it to be. Um, so where I feel like I've been the exact nature of my wrongs is I was barking up the wrong tree for most of my life. I was trying to get my life to be a certain way in order to be happy. The goal was to be happy. Um, and what I'm finding today is my goal is to serve my creator. And when I do that, I'm happy. Who go figure? Who would um huh? That to get from restless, irritable, and discontent, and I always love that's Silkworth talking. Um Restless in the body, irritable in the mind, and discontent in the spirit. Ain't that something? I don't think he meant that. I mean, it wasn't, but it is physical restlessness, you know, mentally irritable and spiritually discontent. Why? Because I don't have this relationship with my creator. It's not a reality to me. Happy, joyous, and free. What I'm finding is that happy, joyous, and free is not a goal, it's a byproduct. And back to that sentence, just to the extent that I humbly rely on God, and that obviously the key word is humble. The rely is not so hard to understand, but the humble part is for me. Um, just to the extent, just to the extent, he's such a brilliant writer, just to the extent that I humbly rely on God and try to be the person God wants me to be. Shows up on the next page, page 69. We ask God to mold our ideals and help us live up to them, which is step 11, praying only for knowledge of God's will for me and the power to carry that out. Um, just to the extent that I humbly rely on God and I try to be the person I think God created me to be. I am created by God's purpose for God's purpose, not for Jack's personal enjoyment. Although that's the way I'd lived it before. Um, just to the extent that I do those two things, I will be enabled. I will get the power because lack of power, all my fear reduces down to lack of power. And if I really get into it, it's lack of power over me, lack of power over my reactions to my life. Um, just to the extent that I humbly rely and be the person I think God wants me to be, I will get the power to meet the calamity, match the calamity, experience the calamity with serenity instead of restless, irritable, and discontent. Unbelievable to me. Um, okay, I don't know what I want to say. This other uh, I asked you to print this thing. It's a summary. It's in the introduction, and I'm just going to run through that and and then we will be done. This worksheet, by the way, I've redone it a little bit and added some things, and I just want to emphasize that at the bottom of this thing, under the physical column, it says sobriety, and underneath that it says pause, and underneath that it says step 10. So the magic formula for me, um, if I want to match the calamity with serenity, is to pause and then ask and listen and then do. So the pause is the step 10, where I simply stop. I quit playing God. I take a few deep breaths. I try to be present. I ask and listen. I ask the question, how can I best serve thee? I ask the question, what do you want me to do? I ask the question, please mold my ideals and help me live up to them. And then I listen. You remember we read that poem by Mary Oliver, let me remember my work, which is mostly standing still and learning to be astonished. Whoa, what a wonderful idea. Learn to be astonished, react to my life with astonishment rather than resentment. And I think when you get down at the bottom of page 25, it's so important when it says, if you're a real alcoholic, if you've got this physical allergy, this mental blank spot, and this agnostic relationship with God, you only get two alternatives. There are only two. Go on to the bitter end, trying to blot out of your mind how miserable you are, or accept spiritual help. Seek a relationship with God in whatever way you are led to do that. Um, any rate, pause, ask and listen, do step 10, step 11, step 12, match calamity with serenity. Um, any rate, okay. So let's see. So this is after going through these three aspects of the disease. To sum up, what I've just said. First of all, we have to quit playing God because it doesn't work. Next, we have to invite God in as our director, our principal, our parent, our friend. This is right before the third step prayer. And finally, we have to do as we are directed to do because faith without works is dead. Understanding is never enough in our business. Sanity is not enough. Sanity's got to move to service. And when we get into service, we get serenity. Service is where we be the person we think our Creator wants us to be. Um, the main barrier to spiritual growth is contempt prior to investigation. This is a wonderful statement in the spiritual appendix, and our contempt prior to investigation can be very subtle. Sometimes it's forceful. No, whatever. No, I'm not even going to listen to you, or I'm not going to try to understand what you've just said. I got my judgment, and that's it. Um, Other times, it's just it reflects our unwillingness to be open, unwillingness to say the set aside. Please set aside everything I think I know, so I can have an open mind and a new experience. Um, And I quote this thing on page 28. If what we have learned and seen and felt means anything at all, it means that all of us, whatever our race, creed, or color, are the children of a living, loving Creator with whom we may form a relationship upon simple and understandable terms as soon as we are honest, open, and willing enough to try. That's always how it works. HOW, honest, open, willing. Am I being honest? Am I open to a whole new way of approaching something or my very own life? And am I willing to do um, this spiritual work? Um, I've said before and will say again that this wonderful way of reading the book, assuming the book, is a statement of the truth of the experience of the people that wrote the book. Every statement. We are in this world to play the role God assigns. Is that true for me? Yes or no? Do I want it to be true for me? If the answer is no, that's not true for me. Do I want it to be true for me? Yeah, maybe I do. I think it would feel better. Um, am I willing to do what they said they did to get this to be true for me? Nah, I'm not. I just want it. I don't want to do the work. Um, and then the last question, well, am I willing to pray for the willingness to do this difficult work? And the one other thing that's made a big difference for me is learning to ask my creator, do you want me to be willing? I mean, confirming that, yeah, my creator would like me to be honest, open, and willing and do this difficult work or whatever it is. And if I get a green light, then give me the power to be willing. Give me the power to do it, the focus and the drive to do it. Let's see. I'm gonna. Just another thing here, and it says this so early, it's just easy to miss. It's page 19, which is third page of There is a Solution. A much more important demonstration of our principles lies before us in our respective homes, occupations, and affairs. We hear people often say, you may be the only example of the big book somebody else sees. It's easy to ignore that. Um, but we do. We watch each other. We watch each other in meetings and we watch each other outside of meetings. And I think this is something that I could put up on the wall or tattoo on my arm where I'd see it. This is faith with works. This is where we bring this stuff into the marketplace, the world, the whatever. It's great when we're all dandy people in our AA meetings or alone when we're home. It's a whole nother thing when you head out the door and off into the world and in our respective homes, occupations, and affairs. Okay. I can't thank you enough for showing up, all of you. It's been a treat for me to do this, and we are going to go on. We're going to but it's going to be open discussion. It's not going to be every week. So I want to thank you. I'm going to ring this gong, then we'll have some open discussion. And so see you soon. Thank you.